Alright, hello, and welcome back. On my previous video, one of my lovely viewers asked for a little bit of help with the Plague Herald, and so I figured, what the heck, why not? Let's just go ahead and make a character guide. So I've never made one of these before, so please feel free to leave any and all feedback and thoughts down below, and I will read all of them and try to learn and get better. So let's just go ahead and jump into it. Plague Herald is a 6 HP, 11 card hand size class. So we're squishy, we don't want to be up in the thick of things, but we do have 11 cards, which is a really, really nice thing to start with. Basically, that means that we can be looking to play one loss early game and not really feel any pain or punishment from that. Most classes in general are going to be like about 10 cards. That's probably about the average hand size for a class. And so if we have 11, that means we can play one lost card and we'll still exhaust at the same time as all of our allies. And, you know, we don't really need to be lasting 7, 8 rounds, well, I guess 6 rounds longer than our allies. So it's totally fine for us to play one lost card early. So that's one really good thing that we can be looking at while we're trying to pick our starting cards, is that we have room to play at least one loss early, and then we can be looking for another good loss card to play later in the scenario, maybe when we only have 3 or 4 cards left. So it's really nice to have that freedom in your card selection, to know that you have that room where a loss won't hurt you as much as it does some of the other classes. Other than that, this class has a lot of poison, a lot of curses, and a whole lot of really complicated loss effects. So that kind of goes pretty well with our 11 card hand size. So let's dive into these level 1 cards. First of all, we've got Vile Pestilence. This is one of the absolute staples and just best cards that the Plague Herald has access to. It's just an attack 1, and it's only range 2, but we get this wonderful circular 7-hex AoE, and we poison everything inside. Now, we do poison our allies as well as enemies, and that's just a trend that you'll find with a lot of Plague Herald cards. In general, do your absolute best to not poison your allies with this. Poisoning is one of the worst status conditions you can deal with, just because there's no good way to remove it. Like, in general, healing is one of the weakest effects you have in Gloomhaven, but that just means that when you use your heals, you want them to count. So aside from like a few various heal ones that some classes have, wasting a heal by poisoning an ally is never going to feel good for them, and they will not love you for it. So try to avoid your allies with this. I would always play this card for the top. This top is just really, really good to poison basically a whole room of enemies, so ignore that bottom move 3. We've got Grasping Vermin, so we've got that exact same circular AoE hex, but this one's just an attack 0. It does immobilize, which kind of points us, so far we've seen an attack 1 and an attack 0, but poison and immobilize, so we're going to be trending a little bit more in the supportive role, away from the damage, but we still do have very good damage output, so we don't need to worry too much in that regard. Then the bottom, a permanent shield oneself, but deduct 1 range from all your attacks. I mean, so far we've seen just a range 2 and a range 3 attack, so we don't really want to turn our Vile Pestilence melee. So Grasping Vermin is a card that I'm going to leave behind at level 1 and not bring with us. Wretched Swarm, once again, we get that lovely AoE pattern with a stun on it this time, which is super, super solid, and then a move 4. So this is a loss that you're probably not going to want to play early. This is a good loss to save for later in the scenario, and you've got a move 4 to use in the meantime. So super, super solid. Also, 84 is nice and slow, slower than almost all enemy cards. You know, certain enemy types like maybe Earth Demons will go slower than you, but 84 is going to underspeed a lot of things. Guards, archers, skeletons, so... Spread the Plague. So this is the first one of our good loss effects that we could potentially play early. Once during each of your attack actions, you may poison an ally within range 2 or damage them if they're already poisoned to add +1 to your entire attack action. Now overall, I think this is kind of a hard effect to gauge as how useful it will be. But, you know, if you're using this frequently throughout a scenario with all of the AoE we've seen so far, you could conceivably deal like 15 extra damage in a scenario, but that's going to require poisoning your allies like 5 or 6 times. And so overall, I just don't think that that loss really hits the mark for us. But the bottom of this card is actually very solid, just attack 3, range 3. But we've already seen from Vile Pestilence that it's very easy for us to poison, and we can even pair these two cards together, Vile Pestilence with Spread the Plague, to make this attack 3 actually an attack 4. So having a bottom attack 4 at range is completely amazing. One of the absolute best level 1 cards in the game. So we're definitely bringing Spread the Plague. The top is very underwhelming, and I don't recommend it. Poisoning allies is just not good. But a super, super solid bottom. Also, 27 is the fastest card we've had so far. Biting Gnats, we've got another move 4, which is solid, and then a target 2, range 4, so really good range on this card. The first good, solid, super solid range we've had. And it's just an attack 2, so a 4 base damage card, but with 2 poisons, this is 6. And so an attack 6 non-loss at 4 range is way above the curve. That is a super solid level 1 card. Very happy to see that. Winged Congregation. Now this is a loss effect that I do recommend playing in certain scenarios, and you'll probably know it when you see it. Any scenario that has a ton of difficult terrain or a ton of traps, or something where your goal is just to get to the end of the scenario, a lot of those, something like Winged Congregation here can actually be really, really helpful. And this is really more for like a level 1 when we don't have access to our super powerful loss effects. In general, like having flying, it's really, really nice, and it's really, really fun to play with. So if you've never used any of the items that can give you flying, or if you've never played this card before, I definitely recommend play it at least once or twice in a scenario. It's just really fun to be able to walk over all the obstacles and stand on obstacles, and it's really satisfying. Also, it's 16, so this is a really good initiative for us, and we get a nice useful bottom of move 2, heal all adjacent allies. So this doesn't heal yourself, unfortunately, but it does give us a way to remove a poison from Vile Pestilence. So if we have a melee ally who was up in there in the middle of everything, and they just so happen to get poisoned by us, now we can finally remove that. So super solid card. Mostly you're going to want to play this for the bottom, but in some scenarios the top will actually be useful. Creeping Curse. So this is one of the absolute core cards for my build. Attack 3, range 3 curse. Really, really good. Nothing bad about that. 72 initiative isn't the greatest. And then move 2, curse an enemy on the bottom. I mean, you've got other cards that will move more than 2, and you can curse with the top. So you might as well just play the top of this card instead of the bottom. And then you are seeing double. They thought this card was so good that they would just make it twice. This one does have loot 2 on the bottom, so in certain scenarios where you have to use a loot action to grab a chest or something like that, you know, you'll need to use this. But I definitely recommend bringing both of these cards, and especially early on in a scenario, trying to stack as many curses in the enemy deck as possible. Paralyzing Bite. This is going to get us more into that supportive role, just an attack 1 stun. So if you play the Tinkerer, this is basically stun shot. It's a little bit slower on the initiative at 31, but super, super solid. And then this move 6 jump can actually come in handy. You know, if you didn't play Winged Congregation for the top, which most of the time you're not going to want to, this move 6 jump at the end of a scenario can actually really save your bacon. You know, if you're split away from the group, if things have gotten out of hand, like sometimes positioning can be the main thing that's really holding you back. Sometimes you just have to get out of range of the enemies, and so this is always an option that you have available to you, just because we have that extra card, and so we have one loss action that we can look to play throughout the scenario, one more than like our allies do. So Foul Wind, this is another one of those lost actions. The next 6 times air is available, you can consume it to add +1 to your entire attack action. So we can kind of see why Grasping Vermin is an attack 0 now. If we had both of these effects, Spread the Plague and Foul Wind up, we could turn Grasping Vermin into an attack 2, throw on a power potion to make it an attack 3, but overall it's just not worth it. Unfortunately, we don't have any access to air unless we play a lost card. So we don't have any way to proc this. Maybe if your ally created a lot of air, you could consider it, especially at level 1 when we don't have any other losses to play. But if you're not playing with an ally who's setting a lot of air, don't bring this card. Definitely don't. Although The bottom loot one, if you're in a scenario where you have to loot for chests, you'll have to bring this card. Scattered Terror. This is actually a super, super good lost attack top. Anytime you're playing a scenario that has shielded enemies, definitely this card is something that you could consider burning super early on, just because a 3 target attack 4, if they have at least 2 shield, that is a really, really good attack. And then 3 target attack 5 if they're all poisoned already. So definitely, definitely not bad. But mostly we're going to want to keep this for the 11 initiative. Most of the time this is just going to be an 11 speed move 2 for you, and then it's just going to let you get into position and do whatever you need to do. Something like pairing it with this next card, Endemic, is really good, because this is an attack 3, range 2, target 2. So really, really short range, but that gives us, if we're in a position where we're hitting poisoned enemies, we can just go really fast, move in with Scattered Terror, and hit both of those enemies for 4, which is a really good way to finish off enemies that are at half health or below. We've got Virulent Strain. Remove poison from an enemy to cause it to suffer 3 damage. That's really, really good. It's completely it's true damage, so it goes through shields. You don't have to pull an attack modifier. It's just a guaranteed 3 damage. So you can always use this to pick off an enemy that's at 3 or less health and they're poisoned. Unfortunately, it does remove the poison from them, so you don't really want to use it unless it's going to kill something. But this can be a really good way to damage those shielded enemies, flame demons, living spirits, anything with high shield. The bottom is just going to help us spread some poisons around. Overall, this card is good, and it has an effect that we're going to be looking to play a lot later on, but we're going to get better versions of this card. So we're going to bring it in the beginning, but we're going to drop it pretty soon and just get better versions. And our last card is Blistering Vortex. This is another loss action that you can look to play early. Just an attack 9. It does set wind for us if you had foul wind, but then you're having to play 2 losses. And then the bottom is just a move 2 shield. So I choose to not bring this card. I don't bring Blistering Vortex, Foul Wind, or Grasping Vermin. Alright, so with all of that said, we can touch on items for a little bit. So I am going to open my shop here. This is a Prosperity 9 shop. So you will see every item in the entire game. But I'm only going to talk about level 1 items right here, and then I'll give a little bit of a pause and talk about, I think, some Prosperity 4 items that I really like. So here is the shop. Let's go first at helmets. And I think at level 1, the only thing that we really have our eyes on is this Eagle Eyes goggles. That's going to make our Vile Pestilence a lot stronger, just because we're going to be hitting 3 or 4 targets with it, and it is only an attack 1, but if you're hitting 4 targets and you draw a +1 on each of them, 8 damage for a non-loss attack with poisoning all of the targets, that is an amazing turn. Absolutely amazing. So Eagle Eye goggles are really, really good for that. The only other thing, I don't think there really is another level 1 helmet that I would recommend. Just go for an Eagle Eye goggles. Maybe if your team has already picked up all the Eagle Eye goggles, maybe just pass on a helmet. But it is very good on you. When it comes to chest pieces, the starting chest pieces are not super amazing on you. Cloak of Invisibility is okay. We are a low HP class, and we do have some short-ranged moves, like Endemic is just range 2. So you definitely can bring a Cloak of Invisibility, but in general, I think it's normally better on your other allies. I really like Cloak of Invisibility on a melee target where they can use it as just an emergency rescue button if they miss position or if the enemies draw a super dangerous card. That way they can go invisible, since they're not really going to be able to get out as easily as we are at super long range. We definitely don't want to wear armor. It's going to add negative modifiers to our deck. And so the chest piece that you can get early on that I like the most is the second skin here. Now this is available from a treasure chest in one of the first scenarios in the game, unless I'm completely wrong, but I think it's one of the crypt levels. This is the item that you get in the chest, and it's actually really good on us. Just removes 2 -1s from our attack modifier deck. We're going to be looking to be doing an attack every single turn. We're a support, but all of our support actions are attacks that either stun or curse or poison. So we're attacking every single round, and even once we have every single perk grabbed, we still have 3 -1s in our deck. So especially early on, this can increase your damage output quite a bit, and just make it more likely you're going to draw your better cards. And there's not really anything else better early on that we're going to be wanting to get. So I would recommend the second skin. For hand slot items, once again, early on, there's not anything super amazing on us. There is the piercing bow, which you can use with something like Vile Pestilence, but in general, we don't normally struggle very much with shielded targets, just because if we are facing shielded targets, we've got Virulent Strain for this 3 guaranteed true damage, and we've also got Scattered Terror for this really nice pierce. So shielded targets aren't really the worst for us. Also, we probably will be able to poison them, and that basically just removes one of their shield. If you've got extra gold, you could go for a piercing bow. I don't think early on there's anything else here that really sticks out to me. Yeah, there is a slightly higher prosperity item, but I'll talk about that in a second. Boots, you're definitely going to want a pair of Boots of Striding. We have access to the fly if we really need like jump for a certain scenario, and we also have Paralyzing Bite, which always gives us that emergency move 6 jump if we need jump for a scenario. So I think Boots of Striding are definitely the way to go. We only have a couple move 4s, and so we're going to need to be moving 2 a lot and just slowly progressing through the scenario, and then we'll get to do a big move where we can move 4 and use our boots and get all the way to the other side of the room and ready for the next room. So I really like Boots of Striding. Oh, and then for your potions, a power potion is super good early on just because we're doing a lot of AoE. Later, we will definitely want healing potions when we have some effects that are going to damage ourselves. But power potion, I think, is definitely the first item to go for. And then we don't need stamina potion as much as some of the other classes, just because we've got so much stamina with 11 cards as it is. And so I'm just going to talk about higher prosperity items. I think I'm going to go through prosperity 4 right here. And you have officially been warned. So a hawk helm is really nice for us. It's not quite as good as eagle eye goggles, but if all the eagle eye goggles are taken, a hawk helm is definitely not bad. This can just increase the range on your endemic to make it 3 range. Also, some of our level up cards are only going to be 2 range, so hawk helm is definitely not bad. We're basically always hitting at range, so just being able to you know, maybe hit a different target than the one you were initially planning, hawk helm can really come in handy for that. Chest pieces, honestly, I still don't, there's not anything that you get in the next few levels that I think is really super worth it on this class. So I'm still going to stay with the second skin. But at prosperity 4, we do get an amazing item for us, which is the volatile bomb. Volatile bomb is just, it's super nice. It makes it so that we can take one of our just attack 3 curses and make it hit 3 targets instead and add 3 curses. So an attack 9 curse 3, that is just an absolutely amazing action to do, especially in the first room when you can just stack curses really quickly and make sure that they're going to get pulled throughout the scenario. So volatile bomb is super nice on us. Also, a tower shield is really good. We don't want to get hit frequently, but when you have a tower shield, it makes it super easy for you to get hit at least 1 time per rest cycle, and then it makes it so that when you long rest, you're basically healing for 4 health instead of just 2, since it resets your shield and you can go and get hit again and block an extra 2 damage. So I really like tower shield and a volatile bomb as your like kind of mid-game-ish prosperity 4 items. You also will get access to the boots of speed. Not super necessary. I think in general you should just be okay with going slow. You know, it sounds boring to say like, hey, we're just gonna go slow this time, but sometimes this is a class where you've got enough range, you're gonna be in the back. We're throwing out a lot of support for our tankier frontline members, so it's okay for us to go slow and maybe not always be the one that's in there, you know, causing causing all of the trouble ASAP. So boots of speed are an option. If all of the boots of striding are taken, I can definitely see picking up boots of speed. And that's probably the only other thing I would go for. You really don't need winged shoes. And yeah. And then the only other handheld item that I would really recommend is a stun powder. You know, it can just go onto our creeping curse, one of our attack 3, range 3 curse cards. Just add a stun to it when an enemy is doing something particularly nasty, especially when you're facing something like cultists and you know they just so happen to draw their summon card on that turn. You can just say no, that is not going to happen. Just a really nice thing to keep in your back pocket. And you can also use this when you're doing an AoE attack. It'll just only stun one of the targets, but you get to pick which one of the targets in the AoE gets stunned. So really, really nice, really versatile item, and it kind of fits really well with the style of support that we're going for. Alright, so I want to just go ahead and go through some just general gameplay. So I just played a level with a level 1 Plague Herald, Brute, and Mind Thief. This is on +2 difficulty, so it's not like super easy. And I'm just going to be showing my Plague Herald turns here. So here on turn 1, I just went slow so that everything could group up and I could poison them all. Then since I poisoned my Brute on the previous turn, on this turn I went ahead and went fast to remove that poison with Winged Congregation bottom and Endemic top to just do 2 attacks for 4 since they're poisoned already. Then my group was able to clean up that little bit of allies, so I went slow again on this turn to move forward and start adding some curses. So now that we're a little bit safer, we don't have to worry about killing everything. Now I just want to add as many curses as possible into their deck. So here I go for a double hit since I'm in range of everything and I've got allies who will kind of soak some damage for me. So that's 2 curses that I've put in the deck in the last 2 turns. And then now I think this is my final turn before it's time to rest, so I've got my stun to play here. Just need to pick the target, but I don't really want to kill this guy, just because if I kill him, then I don't get the stun effect at all. So I decided to target this archer instead, and I drew the miss, so I wouldn't have killed that guy, but he's 1 health anyway, so not worth hitting him. So we finished that, we cleaned up the room, we moved up to the next, and so now as soon as we open the door, time to keep stacking more curses, and just keep in mind, like, every time I'm using these curse cards, I'm making sure I target something that is not going to die to the actual attack. Now, we're in room 2, which means I need to spread poisons around again. So I can hit 3 here, and I'm also in range to go for a spread the plague bottom, so that is what I went for. And I don't really show it in any of these clips because I'm only showing my Plague Herald turns, but every single curse that I played in this scenario ends up getting drawn by the enemies. So they had a lot of value, and I probably would have lost this scenario without the curses. Unfortunately, I draw a miss here. Even with advantage, I was, I was melee using Endemic, so I missed out on the kill, but not the end of the world. Here, I just decided to back up and go for the creeping curse. I probably should have done it the other way with paralyzing bite to guaranteed get the stun. So I didn't add the curse to that enemy on that hit right there, but it's all right. Here I didn't realize that these flame demons only had range 2 on their retaliate. Normally they have a little bit more than that, so I definitely could have avoided these retaliates here. But with that eagle eye goggles, I was able to pick up the kill anyway. So none of these characters are like super decked out or anything. I literally just threw them together to run into a scenario. So I'm pretty happy with how all of this went overall. So we opened the door to the final room, and I just decided to open it with a stun, just to help kind of reduce the damage. My party isn't super healthy overall going into this final room, so it's really important to find like a really important target to stun. I went for this flame demon because both of these other enemies were going to have disadvantage, and I've got some curses in the deck, so disadvantage is going to help out there. Then here, I'm able to get my last Vile Pestilence of the scenario to poison as many priority targets as possible, and then I'm just going to try to run out of range of the Flame Demons. Unfortunately, they got an AoE attack here, so I had to use my boots to get out of range. My Mind Thief is invisible, but my Brute is right there and going to soak up some damage. And I think my Brute ended up drawing one of the curse cards here, but he ended up surviving the round, but then he exhausted to not having cards. But now we can finally go for that Scattered Terror top to get a 3 target and pierce the shields on these flame demons. Because of those poisons that I added on the previous turn, I basically kill everything except for this elite, and his retaliate does kill me, but Mind Thief, because of the poison and all of the damage that we were able to deal to this Flame Demon on our turn, Mind Thief is able to pick up the kill. So in general, we basically set up all the dominoes for our allies to go and knock down. We want to poison a whole group of enemies so that our allies can do more damage. We want to curse them a whole bunch of times so that our allies don't take as much damage. But that means we want to be hitting higher health targets, and so we're not necessarily finishing off all the kills, but we are setting up our team for success. Let's go ahead and hit the level up cards. So, on this first level up here, we've got the choice between Under the Skin and Rot Maggots. Under the Skin is going to be an attack 3, range 3. We've seen that before. But instead of a curse, this time it's a pierce 2. Then we get a move 4 on the bottom. Rot Maggots is an attack 4, so the highest base attack we've seen so far. But it's only range 2, which we've seen a few times. And then poison all allies adjacent to the target. So, another card that lets you poison your allies, but if you just hit something not next to your ally, they won't get poisoned. Unfortunately, the range 2 does make this a lot harder to use. So if you have access to something to increase your range, that goes really, really well with this card. And if you have that, 100% I recommend taking Rot Maggots. Under the Skin is good, but like I said with the Piercing Bow, we already have access to some Pierce. We've got Scattered Terror, and we've got Virulent Strain to deal true damage to targets with those shields. So I'm going to go for Rot Maggots. Also, this bottom action is definitely worth not skipping over. Heal 3 on 2 targets can be really, really good. If you poison your ally, you can get rid of it. Or even if you didn't, just healing in between rooms, 2 health it's 33% of a 6 HP character's health at level 1. So, not super amazing, but definitely not a bad card. So we'll bring that. This is a time where probably the card I'm going to drop, I'm probably going to be looking at this point at Virulent Strain. This is definitely a card that can come in depending on the scenario. Just being able to deal that true damage through shields is really, really good. This is a really good card for us to mess around with early, to get kind of used to the effect that it'll give of the 3 true damage. But it kind of falls behind. It's kind of just not worth playing this card most of the time. So we'll go for Rot Maggots. This gives us another access to poison, which is really good and fits into our build well. And level 3. So we have Succumb to the Gift and Fetid Flurry. Succumb to the Gift, top is kill a normal enemy who is poisoned within range 3. And then the bottom is to bless all allies who have poison. So this top execute action is not very good. The only way we can poison a target so far is to hit them with an attack. Well, I guess we have the bottom of Virulent Strain, but we just dropped that from our build. So that means we're hitting them with an attack to poison them. And then we could always hit them with a combo of Spread the Plague bottom with, like, Gathering Doom top. And that's 2 attacks for 4. With the attack we did on the previous turn, we're probably just going to kill the target anyway. And we didn't even need to use this execute. It only works on normals, not on elites. So the execute is not very good on this. And then this bottom action is really nice when monsters are poisoning you. If you're facing a bunch of giant vipers or elite bandit archers or oozes, things that love to poison you. But overall, this card is going to make you want to poison your allies, and that is not something that we want to do. That is something we should be avoiding. So we're going to skip Succumb to the Gift and go for Fetid Flurry. This attack 4 range 3 curse, we have seen this before, but it's really, really good. So we're just going to add this to the build. You could drop either Creeping Curse or Gathering Doom at this point. I am not going to. I like to keep three curse cards in a deck. I mean, if we're going to be just doing an attack, I would rather that attack curse. So this is an attack 4. I'm going to go ahead and drop Biting Gnats at this point. This card is also an attack 4, but it doesn't give us the curse. We also get a better initiative at 26 instead of 47. And we are losing the 4 move, which was really nice for us. Now we only have 1 card that gives us 4 move in Wretched Swarm, but most of the time we're going to be kind of just doing a default move 2 along with an attack 3 top or something like that, like Endemic or Gathering Doom or Creeping Curse or Fetid Flurry. So we can slowly be just moving 2 every single turn of the scenario, and then when it's time to get to the next room, we've got Wretched Swarm for that move 4. So with a pair of boots, we shouldn't need to have 2 move 4s in the deck, just one of them should be plenty. So I'm going Fetid Flurry at level 3. Level 4, we've got Storm Wings and Nightmare's Affliction. Now, Storm Wings is a really cool card. Attack 4, range 4, consume wind to target all enemies on the path to the target. So this is Impaling Eruption. If you've played or played with a Spellweaver, it's exactly Impaling Eruption, except you have to consume wind to do it, and it has 1 higher base damage. So this paired with some of the other effects we have, well, you can't use it with Foul Wind because both of them you have to consume air. But Spread the Plague Top to make this an attack 5, and then Empower Potion to make it an attack 6. Definitely not a bad attack, but it is a loss. The move 5 on the bottom is useful. We did just drop a move 4 on the previous level. But I think every single time I'm going Nightmare's Affliction here. This just does basically what we've been wanting to do the whole game to this point. It just does it on steroids. We're able to hit 2 targets at 3 range, so better range than some of our cards, poison and curse them, and set dark, which is going to be useful for us later. Not yet, but it will be later. So I'm going Nightmare's Affliction here every time. And at this point, we're probably going to drop Endemic. You know, we've leveled up a few times. This 3 damage isn't scaling super amazing for us. Let me just make sure there's not anything else I'd rather drop. Yeah, you could drop either of these curse cards, Creeping Curse or Gathering Doom. They're very, very similar. You could drop them just for Nightmare's Affliction, but I'm going to drop Endemic. I would rather have an extra curse added to the deck rather than an extra target with Endemic. And then this is just giving us more access to poison, which is really, really good for us, and another curse. Also, if you've been struggling with the range on Rot Maggots, this is a time you could actually go ahead and drop this from the deck. It is one of our level up cards, so it kind of feels weird to drop it this early on. But we mainly only took this because we wanted more access to poison, and Nightmare's Affliction does give us that access to poison. So if the range on this has been messing you up, which it definitely can with certain team compositions if you don't have a super tanky frontline, also if you keep poisoning your ally with this, they might be fine with you dropping the Rot Maggots for Nightmare's Affliction instead. And level 5. This is an amazing, absolutely amazing level for the Plague Herald. So, Accelerated End. All enemies with poison suffer 1 damage. 2 if you consume dark. So that pairs amazingly with Nightmare's Affliction because we poison 2 targets and we set the dark. So we can, if we have a whole room poisoned, this can easily deal 10, 12, 14 damage. And then the bottom is just going to spread around more poison for us. And Willing Sacrifice. Once during each of your move actions, you may suffer a damage to deal 3 damage to an enemy with poison. And then we're going to ignore that bottom. That bottom is really bad. A lost card for your allies to recover 2 discarded cards at level 5? No, thank you. But this top, this is Virulent Strain on absolute steroids. 1, we get to do it every time we move. 2, we don't remove the poison. So the same target gets to constantly be... You get to use it on the same target over and over and over again to deal 3 damage to them every turn instead of just 1 turn. And the best part is that this is basically our bottom action because it happens with a move, which we're doing most turns anyway, which means we still have a top action and we didn't have to actually play Virulent Strain to get it. So I'm going for Willing Sacrifice here, and this is a really easy switch. We're going to drop Spread the Plague because this is an attack 3 bottom. Well, if we set up Willing Sacrifice, this is an attack 3 bottom, except we get to use it every single turn instead of once per rest cycle. So this is the first card that I have that I say I want to play this lost card, and I want to play it relatively early into the scenario, and I want to do that basically every game. This card is really, really, really fun to play with, and it's build defining. And this is what I was talking about when I said you're going to need health potions a little bit later on, just because you're going to deal a lot of damage to yourself. And so this is a place where rot maggots, we're really not using this for the top very much anymore, but this bottom action is becoming more valuable now, because now we're damaging ourselves a little bit, but healing 2 is going to give us 2 more accesses to deal 6 true damage to enemies. I don't know what I was going to say, but I had something else that was smart, so we'll just assume that I said something smart there. But Willing Sacrifice is just really good. You might not play it on the first turn of every scenario. It's probably best in general to go ahead and clear the enemies that are in the first room, because that's normally a thing. Every room, as soon as you enter, there are a bunch of enemies, and they normally start clumped up, so it's probably still going to be best for us to just start every scenario with a Vile Pestilence, and then try to add a bunch of curses into the deck. And then after that, once we've cleared out the first room, before we get into the second room while we're resting and looting and all that stuff, that's when you can play Willing Sacrifice. So you can play a bottom to end on a loot pile and Willing Sacrifice top, and now you are ready in the second room to just move with every single attack and deal 3 damage with your top attack and then 3 damage with your bottom to kill something with poison. A really, really good combo that this gives us access to is going for Gathering Doom or Creeping Curse or Fetid Flurry top, hitting a target and getting them low enough to kill with the move action. If you kill a target with Curse, they don't gain the Curse into their deck. So you always want to attack with the Curse first, and then use the true damage from Willing Sacrifice second to get the kill. That way you can kill a target very consistently, like a 7 health target or less. You can kill them really, really easily and still get the curse added to the deck, which is something we've been missing a little bit at this point. So level 5 is absolutely amazing. I really, really love this card. And level 6. So level 6, we've got Stinging Cloud, an attack 2 in this nice circular AoE pattern, Consume Dark for Muddle, and then a move 3 shield. So muddling is actually a really good effect for us at this point, because we have 5 curses that we're adding per rest cycle, and muddle is going to double the odds that those enemies draw those curses. It will also increase the speed that the curses are drawn, but we're adding so many so quickly that we don't really need to worry about how quickly the curses come out. We just want to see them get pulled. So muddling is really good for us. And then we've also got Black Tides, an attack 4, range 3, move 4, set dark. You could definitely grab Black Tides here. If movement has been an issue, moving and setting dark. Actually, at this point, we don't have any use for dark right now, which is why I actually say at this point we should go back and grab Accelerated End. This overall, you can set yourself up to where using Accelerated End top is going to deal 10 to 12 damage in a room, as long as you have the dark from Nightmare's Affliction. But that's a really good 1-2 combo to use. You know, Vile Pestilence as soon as you open a room, then Nightmare's Affliction second, and then Accelerated End third. And you know, any enemy that had 2 health or less at the start of the turn, you just get to pick them off and then damage the ones your allies haven't hit yet. And I really, really like Accelerated End. I think it fits in really well with the build. And oh, I did not mean to level up. We'll just go back to those in a second. Black Tides is really nice here, but we don't have any use for wind at this point in the build, and we don't have any use for dark without Accelerated End. Is it going to let me touch silver? Okay, it is. So with Accelerated End here, we're going to have to lose a card, and I think this is probably the point where Winged Congregation goes. We do lose this really fast initiative, which can be painful for us, but at this point you've probably gotten used to going slow and going later in the round. We'll keep Scattered Terror just for this 11. You could swap these. You could keep Winged Congregation and drop Scattered Terror. You know, maybe if this heal 1 has been useful for you. And then, you know, maybe you'll see a scenario where you really want the flying, but now that we have a lost card we really want to play with Willing Sacrifice, we're not going to be wanting to play this flying really ever. You've probably gotten to mess with it a few times at this point and had your fun. So at this point, I'm dropping Winged Congregation, and we'll bring in Accelerated End. Alright, on to level 7. So we've got a couple of really good options here. We've got Airborne Toxin, Curse and Muddle, all adjacents, or Consume Wind to make it everything within 2 range. And then the bottom is Poison, target all enemies, all of them. No range requirements, super, super powerful. And Baneful Hex. If an enemy draws a curse card, they suffer 3 damage. Really, really, really nice effect here. And move 3 curse. This all fits really, really, really well with a very heavy curse build. And then it fits really, really well if you grabbed a Stinging Cloud here for the Muddle, just to kind of guarantee that enemies are drawing those curses more frequently. But since we went for Willing Sacrifice, we've already got this effect where we're causing things to suffer 3 damage when they're poisoned. And so we're a little bit, and we went for Accelerated End on the previous level, so we're a little bit more of a poison build than a curse. We'd have a lot of curses, but, you know, those are mostly just incidental, and when they get drawn, great, but they're not 100% of our strategy. You know, we get to capitalize on any damage that gets drawn by having it affect our plans in the future, but we don't really want the plan to be like, well, I need them to draw a curse so they suffer this 3 damage on this turn, or I'll be in trouble. So we're going to go for Airborne Toxin. This bottom is not something that you have to use, but it can be really, really nice. You can pair it with Accelerated End right immediately, just to poison everything and start damage off on it. A really good strategy with this card is just to open doors early. You can open all of the doors on, you know, on turn 1 or turn 2 if you want, and just go ahead and poison everything in the entire scenario. And then at that point, you're not needing to use something like Vile Pestilence. So if that's something that your team composition can do, you can definitely drop Vile Pestilence and bring Airborne Toxin instead. But, you know, this is going to be a nice, like, just in case you need it kind of card. And there are some scenarios that are just 1 room long, where, you know, every enemy you have access to it in the beginning, and sometimes Airborne Toxin is just going to be really OP, and it's the kind of thing that you can build a whole team comp around. And so it's just a nice card to have. Baneful Hex is also really good. You can go for either card at this point, or we're just going to go for Airborne Toxin. So at this point, let's just drop Paralyzing Bite. This is a super solid card. We've been using it a lot up until this point, at least hopefully we have. And so we'll go for Airborne Toxin instead here. This top is definitely not something to scoff at. Cursing and Muddling, especially if you have the wind to make it everything within 2 range. This gives us a nice use for actually setting wind with Fetid Flurry, and for drawing those +1 winds that we have in our attack modifier deck. So definitely a really solid top effect, and it does give us access to some of that muddle that we were wanting with Baneful Hex, which we didn't grab. But if your allies do a lot of muddling, Baneful Hex is super, super good. And speaking of that, I mean, here is a gigantic muddle, so this is definitely the card you want to grab if you are going 100% into curses with Baneful Hex. But that's not really what we are going for here. This bottom healing is good, but we've basically already got this effect on Rot Maggots. It's only 1 additional target, and, you know, if you're playing 2-player, then this doesn't help you at all. Only if you're playing 3-player or 4, so... Grim Bargain, we've got this on your next 6 attacks, curse an ally to gain 2 extra targets. Like, okay, I guess we'll get 2 extra curses in on the enemy deck and 2 extra attacks for 3. But we have to curse an ally to do it, and they have to be within range 2, and then a lot of our attacks are only range 3, so, like, maybe, but not really as good as some of the other loss effects we've had. And then muddle yourself to double the damage of 1 attack. Like, our best attack is an attack 5, so No thank you. At this point, you definitely could go back for Baneful Hex if you wanted, but for me, that's even for me, that's starting to get to where we have a lot of losses. If we're wanting to constantly have Baneful Hex and Willing Sacrifice up, I think you really need to pick between the two, and I kind of prefer Willing Sacrifice just so that I can pick the target that's suffering the 3 damage every time. And so I'm going to go back for Black Tides here. This move 4 set dark is really nice for us, and now we finally have a use for this wind that we can set on the top that we got on Airborne Toxin on the previous level. So I think Black Tides is the way to go here, and I'm going to go ahead and drop Wretched Swarm. This is most of the time just going to be a move 4 for us, so we're replacing that move 4 with a move 4, but this is going to set dark, which we can use with our accelerated end, and then we can always use this to set wind, that or Fetid Flurry to set wind, just to use Airborne Toxin. And so this is just another really good way to add a bunch of curses and force those enemies to draw them with the muddles. And finally, our ultimate card, the level 9 card. We've got either Mass Extinction to curse and wound all allies and all enemies. Once again, no range requirements on this. Or the bottom is just Accelerated End on steroids. It's 2 damage instead of 1. Still has the Consume Dark for a damage, but also now a Consume Wind for a damage as well. So that is 4 damage to every poisoned target, which obviously is going to pair really well with our Airborne Toxin, poisoning every single target. So you can't use these at the same time, but Airborne Toxin is going to set a wind for us. So if we use Airborne Toxin, or you can even use Mass Extinction top along with Airborne Toxin bottom to curse, poison, and wound every enemy, then Stamina Potion back Mass Extinction and go for a Mass Extinction bottom with Accelerated End top, and you deal 5 damage to everything, and the entire scenario just melts in front of you. So Mass Extinction is just really good. Convert the Flock, kind of lame. Like a 3 target attack 4. There goes my camera. So 3 target attack 4 is not super inspiring, and this bottom is way too wordy to say add +1 to all of your attacks this round. No thank you. So we'll go Mass Extinction, and at this point we've probably got more curses than we need, so you can drop one of your level 1 cards, or if you've enhanced them, you know, you could drop Fetid Flurry potentially, or Rot Maggots. We probably really don't need the poison that this is giving us. The heal on the bottom is nice. You could drop Vile Pestilence if you've got enough access to poison, although we really don't have that much. It's really just going to be Nightmare's Affliction, and then our perks that we draw. So I still like to keep Vile Pestilence. I think here at this point, I'm probably just going to drop one of these level 1 curses and add in Mass Extinction. And we're super broken here. Nothing else you really need to nothing else you need to worry about. Alright, so now on to enhancements. I'm doing this after the fact, so I don't have my camera set up, but we'll just do it real quick and it'll be alright. So first enhancement that I really recommend is Wretched Swarm. You can add a jump to this movement. To the movement. It's just going to cost you 35 gold. Really solid, really cheap. You don't really need this while you still have Winged Congregation or Paralyzing Bite in the build, just because those give you jump when you may need them. But as soon as you've dropped that, you don't have any access to jump anymore, so adding a jump onto Wretched Swarm can be really good, and that can make you keep this card a little bit longer, and maybe you drop one of these two a little bit sooner. Speaking of these 2 cards, these are our next candidates for enhancement, Creeping Curse and Gathering Doom top. Both of them, you could add a poison to them if you just want a little bit more poison, but you definitely hit the point of diminishing returns where you don't really need to add more and more and more poison. But this can be pretty good for like a level 1, 2, or 3 Plague Herald, just really early on. And then if you're playing digital, you can always sell the enhancements back and turn this poison into a wound, which we don't have any access to wound until level 9, so having a wound just pairs really well with our poison, and especially for hitting shielded targets. If you're rolling in dough, a disarm is absolutely chef's kiss on this. I mean, that is a prime enhancement. That makes for a super solid attack to disarm an enemy for a turn and curse them, and it's just, it can be a couple turns in a row of them doing nothing if you disarm them and then they draw the curse. So that one's a little bit more expensive and one you'd want to save up for, but Poison and Wound are definitely super good here. Even Muddle is not bad. If you have 10 curses in the deck, it's like a 37% chance that they're going to draw it or something like that. But if they're muddled, it jumps all the way to like 74%. It's something like that. I did the math yesterday, but I didn't write it down anywhere. So it's something like a 74% chance when they're muddled that they're going to draw a curse. So super, super cheap enhancement that you can add there. And then the final thing to recommend is on Nightmare's Affliction, adding a target. So this one costs 110, but you're getting 50% extra value out of this card, another attack 1, an extra poison, and an extra curse added. So those are just a couple of relatively cheap enhancements that you can add to the build. Alright, and on to perk points. Very first thing I'm going to do is just take out our -2 and replace it with a 0. And then after that, take out the -1 and replace it with a +1. These are just really good to have early on, especially because we have a couple low damage attacks. That way we're not going to, you know, do our Vile Pestilence and draw -1 and have it do 0 damage. Also, just every time you take out a negative, you increase the odds that you're drawing one of your positive cards instead. So it has like a double-sided positive effect there for you. And then this is where a second skin is really nice, just because we still have our miss and 3 -1s in the deck. So that's like 4 cards that we don't really ever want to draw, and having the second skin is going to drop that from 4 down to 2. After that, I'm going to take either these Rolling Poisons or these Rolling Curses. I like the Rolling Poisons just a little bit more, just because there are more of them. So you're adding 3 cards to the deck that you're basically always happy to pull, unless you're already poisoning, which, you know, that's going to happen sometimes. Then the curses don't really have that effect, because you can double curse on an enemy. So either way, we're going to take those 2 next. After that, you might want to take these negative scenario effects, just depending on kind of where you are in the campaign. Like, especially getting near the end of like the main story, there are a bunch of levels in a row that give you a ton of really bad scenario effects. So probably negative scenario effects is next. You could have even taken this sooner if you really wanted to. After that, I'm going to go for these Rolling Stuns. Never a downside to drawing a stun, always pretty nice. After that, we probably just want to increase our damage a little bit by changing these 0s to +2s, but not super necessary. We're never going to be able to remove our 0s, so we're still going to have 5 in the end, so we're not always going to draw like the absolute best damage. After that, I would probably take these +1 wins. We don't have a use for wind until level 7, so definitely not a high priority for us, and then +1 is just not that good in general. And then after that, we'll take these immobilizes. No reason not to have the immobilizes. You know, sometimes they will be drawn and be helpful, but you'd always rather have a stun instead. And then very last and least, we can take these 2 +1s. They're just going to decrease the odds that we draw our kind of useful rolling modifiers, so not really that great. You can just choose not to add this one if you want. But that is everything I have for you, so feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and if this guide helped you, let me know. If I did something completely wrong and I made absolutely terrible suggestions, just feel free to make fun of me down in the comments below. So have a good one, guys. Thanks.